36 minutes out. So what I'll do now, instead of me babbling on, I'm gonna start reading. I babble on for an hour. I only have 36 minutes left on my phone. I'm gonna start reading Lord of the Rings. Let's see. I'm gonna keep saying this, world. For me personally, the Lord of the Rings series is pretty boring. The books are pretty boring. Even though J.R.R. Tolkien's a legend and he created an amazing world, the world is amazing. It's even better than Last of Us. The book for me personally is a bit boring. No offense. I know people. I know Lord of the Rings fans are gonna get angry with me. Don't get angry with me. It's just my personal opinion. I think that the book series is pretty boring. Amazing series, obviously, amazing world building, but the book is pretty boring in my opinion. Just saying, I'm saying. Yeah. Now I'll read the rest. I'll read the rest of Lord of the Rings. I have a good 9 pages to read, and I'll be done. Obviously, so you gotta bear with me here. Read a good 9 pages. I'm in the part where Frodo and them they sing this song, and then Frodo hears a noise and he suspects it to be a black rider, the noise of a black rider. Obviously, because I already give you my iteration earlier, right? Be careful, the camera might fall down here, right? Right. As Frodo watched, he saw something dark pass across the lighter space between two trees and then halt. It looked like the black shade of a horse, led by a smaller black shadow. The black shadow stood close to the point where they had left the path, and it swayed from side to side. Frodo thought he heard the sound of snuffling, so Frodo suspects it to be another black rider, right? The shadow bent to the ground, and then it began to crawl towards him. Once more, the desire to slip on the ring came over Frodo. So every time the forces of Sauron every time Frodo senses Frodo thinks of every time the forces of Sauron are near to Frodo, obviously Frodo's always tempted to put on the ring, obviously, because the ring is that powerful. Obviously, the ring is always seeking to get back to its master, which is Sauron, obviously. Right. Once more, the desire to slip on the ring came over Frodo, but this time it was stronger than before. So now the desire for Frodo to put on the ring is stronger than before. Obviously, so strong that almost before he realized what he was doing, his hand was groping in his pocket. At that moment, there came a sound like mingled song and laughter. Clear voices rose and fell in the starlit air. A black shadow straightened up and retreated. It climbed onto the shadowy horse and seemed to vanish across the lane into the darkness on the other side. Frodo breathed again. Elves, exclaimed Sam in a hoarse whisper. Elves, sir, he would have burst out of the trees and dashed off towards the voices, if they had not pulled him back. Yes, it is elves, said Frodo. One could meet them sometimes in the woody end. They don't live in the Shire, so Frodo suspects it to be elves, obviously. So he thought it was a black rider first, but now Sam and Frodo and all of them think it's a thinks it's the elves. Obviously, right? One can meet them sometimes in the woody end. They don't live in the Shire, but they wander into it in spring and autumn, out of their own lands away beyond the Tower Hills. I'm thankful that they do. You did not see, but that black rider stopped just here and was actually crawling towards us when the song began. As soon as he heard the voices, he slipped away. What about the elves? Said Sam, too excited to trouble about the rider. Can't we go and see them? Listen, they are coming this way, said Frodo. We have to only to wait. The singing drew nearer. One clear voice rose now above the others. It was singing in the fair elven tongue, of which Frodo knew only a little. So Frodo knows a bit of Elvish, obviously, right? And the others knew nothing. Yet the sound blending with the melody seemed to shape itself in their thought into words which they only partly understood. This was a song as Frodo heard it. As I told you, Three's company is just about them. They camp, they walk, and they talk, and they meet people on the way. That's pretty much what Three's company. So I don't really need to give a reiteration of Three's company. It's just about them walking, talking, camping, singing songs, suspecting black riders to be on the road and all that stuff. That's pretty much what Three's company is about. And Frodo getting ready to leave the Shire. It's a boring chapter, obviously. So now here goes the annoying song again, right? Snow white, O lady clear, O queen beyond the western seas, O light to us that wander here amid the world of woven trees. Gilthoniel, O Bereth, Clear are the eyes, and bright thy breath. Snow White, we sing to thee in a far land beyond the sea. O stars that in the sunless year with shining hand by her sown, in windy fields now bright and clear, we see your silver blossom blown. O Elbereth Gilthoniel, we shall remember, we who dwell in this far land beneath the trees, thy starlight on the western seas. These annoying songs are fucking annoying. Yeah. The song ended. These are high elves. They spoke the name of Elbereth, said Frodo in amazement. Few of that fairest folk are ever seen in the Shire. Not many now remain in Middle Earth east of the Great Sea. This is indeed a strange chance. The hobbits sat in shadow by the wayside. Before long the elves came down the lane towards the valley. They passed slowly, and the hobbits could see the starlight glimmering on their hair and in their eyes. They bore no lights, yet as they walked and shimmered like the light of the moon above the rim of the hills before it rises, seemed to fall about their feet. They were now silent, and as the last elf passed, he turned and looked towards the hobbits and laughed. "Hail, Frodo," he cried. "You are abroad late, or are you perhaps lost?" So Frodo and Sam and them meet the elves, obviously, right? One of the elves. Then he called out to the others, and all the company stopped and gathered around. "This is indeed wonderful," they said. "3 hobbits in a wood at night. We have not seen such a thing since Bilbo went away. What is the meaning of it?" "The meaning of it, fair people," said Frodo, "is simply that we seem to be going the same way as you are. I like walking under the stars, but I would welcome your company. But we have no need of other company, and the hobbits are so dull," they laughed. "And how do you know that we go to the same way as you? We do not know whither we are going." "And how do you know my name?" asked Frodo in return. "We know many things," they said. "We have seen you often before with Bilbo, though you may not have seen us. Who are you?" Remember how before it said how sometimes the elves and dwarves. You know how before sometimes you see the elves and dwarves. Sorry about the noise. You know how before was sometimes you see the elves and dwarves at the borders of the Shire. Well, that's where they get the idea of what so the hobbits are saying, yeah, even though you don't know our name, we know your name because we've seen you hanging around Bilbo in the Shire. Because sometimes the elves and dwarves are at the borders, hanging around the borders of the Shire, obviously. And sometimes Frodo walks close to the borders on the Shire, if I remember. Hence why the elves know. Hence why the elves know what? The elves know. The elves know. I don't know how they know his name, but they said they've seen Frodo before, obviously, right? "We know many things," they said. "We have seen you often before with Bilbo, though you may not have seen us. Who are you, and who is your lord?" asked Frodo. "I am Gildor." "I remember Gildor the elf, right?" answered their leader, "the elf who had first hailed him. Gildor Inglarin of the house of Finrod. We are exiles, and most of our kindred have long ago departed, and we too are now only tarrying here a while, ere we return over the great sea. But some of our kinsfolk dwell still in peace in Rivendell." You might hear the noise upstairs. You hear the noise. You hear the noise. Right? So Frodo, Sam, and then meet Gildor the elf, who is the leader of the. He's a leader, obviously, and him and the elves were exiled, and he's from the house of Finrod, right? "I am Gildor," answered their leader, "the elf who had first hailed him, Gildor Inglorian." Again, this is not in the movie, right? Gildor is not in the movie. "Gildor Inglorian of the house of Finrod." See what I say when I said the movie's different from the books? 80% difference, man. "I am Gildor," answered their leader, "the elf who had first hailed him, Gildor Inglorian of the house of Finrod. We are exiles, and most of our kindred have long ago departed, and we too are now only tarrying here a while, ere we return over the great sea. But some of our kinsfolk dwell still in peace in Rivendell. Come now, Frodo, tell us what you are doing, for we see that there is some shadow of fear upon you." "O wise people," interrupted Pippin eagerly, "tell us about the Black Riders." "Black Riders," said low voices. "Why do you ask about the Black Riders?" because 2 black riders have overtaken us today, or one has done so twice. Obviously, right? So Frodo and them, the first time the Black Rider shows up on the road, Frodo hides, Sam and Pippin hide, obviously. They're not sure what that Black Rider is. They think it's Sam thinks it's the one that his father met in Hobbiton, whereas Pippin thinks there's no connection between that rider that Sam's father met and the one they saw on the road, obviously. And then they sing some songs. Frodo hears a noise and he sees another Black Rider, and then he sees another Black Rider, but he doesn't know if it's the same Black Rider or if it's a different Black Rider. And then the elves show up. Gildor and the elves show up, obviously. If I'm correct. So they saw the Black Rider and then the elves show up afterwards, right? So before, when I said they thought it was a Black Rider and said it's elves. No, the Black Rider showed up, and then it went. The Black Rider went away. Then the elves showed up. Obviously, so I was mistaken there. I told you, if I make a mistake, you gotta bear with me, world. Especially the Lord of the Rings fans. The Lord of the Rings fans are crazy. Right. So now they want to know who this Black Rider is. So because Frodo and them are ignorant about the Black Riders, obviously, and that's why they're asking Gildor, "Do you know who the Black Riders are?" Obviously, that we saw. Obviously, all wise people, interrupted Pippin eagerly. Tell us about the Black Riders. Black Riders, they said in low voices. Why do you ask about Black Riders? Because 2 Black Riders have overtaken us today, or one has done so twice, said Pippin. Only a little while ago he slipped away as you drew near. So when the elves approached, the Black Riders won away, obviously. Right? The elves did not answer at once, but spoke together softly in their own tongue. At length Gildor turned to the hobbits. We will not speak of this here, he said. We think you had best come with us now. It is not our custom, but for this time we will take you on our road, and you shall lodge with us tonight if you will. So Frodo and them are now going to spend the night with the elves, obviously. So I forgot to mention. So Three's Company is pretty much Frodo, Sam, Pippin get ready in the Shire. They walk and talk and camp on the journey to Buckland. On the journey to Buckland, obviously. They see this. They see the Black Rider. They sing songs. They see another Black Rider. The elves show up. Gildor and the elves show up. Frodo and them ask them about the what? About the Black Rider, and then now the elves are inviting them over to their home. We're not going to talk about it here. Come with us and spend a night with us at their house. So Frodo, Sam, and Pippin spend a night at Gildor's abode. Gildor's house, or it is, right? You shall lodge with us tonight if you will. Oh, fair folk, this is good fortune beyond my hopes, said Pippin. Sam was speechless. I thank you indeed, Gildor Inglorian, said Frodo, bowing. Elen Sela Lumenen Omen Tiel Vo. A star shines in the hour of our meeting, he added in high elven speech. So Frodo knows a bit of Elvish, obviously. Right, how much page do I have left? I only have 6 pages left. I'm done chapter 3. Let's see, right? So chapter 3, some sections are pretty interesting. When they meet Gildor, that part's pretty interesting, obviously. Right. Be careful, friends, cried Gildor, laughing. Speak no secrets. Here is a scholar in the ancient tongue. Bilbo was a good master. Hail, elf friend, he said, bowing to Frodo. Come now with your friends and join our company. You had best walk in the middle so that you may not stray. You may be very wary before we halt. Why? Where are you going? Asked Frodo. For tonight we go to the woods on the hills above Woodhall. It is some miles, but you shall have rest at the end of it, and it will shorten your journey tomorrow. They now marched on again in silence and passed like shadows and faint lights for elves, even more than hobbits, could walk when they wished without sound or footfall. Pippin soon began to feel sleepy, and staggered once or twice, but each time a tall elf at his side put out his arm and saved him from a fall. Sam walked along at Frodo's side as if in a dream, with expression on his face of fear and half of astonished joy. The woods on either side became denser. The trees were now younger and thicker, and as the Thane went lower, running down, this is all use of descriptions, obviously, right? The woods on either side became denser. The trees were now younger and thicker, and as the lane went lower, running down into a fold of the fields, blah, 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 right? There were many deep breaks of hazel and rising slopes on the other hand. At last the elves turned aside from the path. A green ride lay almost unseen through the thickets on the right, and this they followed as it would away back up the wooden slopes onto the top of the shoulder of the hills that stood out into the lower land of the river valley. Suddenly they came out again. Info dumps, man. Suddenly they came out of the shallow trees. No one cares about this, right? And before them lay a wide space of grass, grey under the night. On three sides the woods pressed up upon it, but eastward the ground fell sleepily, and the tops of the dark trees, growing at the bottom of the slope, were below their feet. Beyond the lowlands lay dim and flat under the stars. Near at hand the few lights twinkled in the village of Woodhall. So Frodo and them are going to Woodhall, where the elves, where Will Gilder and all them are from, right? The elves sat on the grass and spoke together in soft voices. They seemed to take no further notice of the hobbits. Frodo and his companions wrapped themselves in cloaks and blankets, and drowsiness stole over them. The night grew on, and the lights in the valley went out. Pippin fell asleep, pillowed on a green hillock. Away high in the east swung Remnant, the netted stars, and slowly above the mist, red Borgia rose. This is all impotence, right? Glowing like a jewel of fire. Again, this is not in the movie. Then, by some shift of airs, all the mist was drawn away like a veil, and there leaned up as he climbed over the rim of the world, the swordsman of the sky, Menel Veger, right? With his shining belt. The elves all burst into song. Suddenly, under the trees, a fire sprang up with a red light. Come, the elves called the hobbits. Come. Now is the time for speech and merriment. Pippin sat up and rubbed his eyes. He shivered. There is a fire in the hall and food for hungry guests, said an elf standing before him. At the south end of the greensward, there was an opening. There the green floor ran on into the wood and formed a wide space like a hall, roofed by the boughs of trees. Their great trunks ran like pillars down each side. In the middle there was a wood fire blazing, and upon the tree pillars torches with lights of gold and silver were burning steadily. The elves sat around the fire upon the grass or upon the sawn rings of old trunks. Some went to and fro bearing cups and pouring drinks. Others brought food on heaped plates and dishes. This is poor fare, they said to the hobbits, for we are lodging in the greenwood, far from our halls. If ever you are a guest at home, we will treat you better. It seems to me good enough for a birthday party, said Frodo. Pippin afterwards recalled little of either food or drink, for his mind was filled with light upon the elves' faces, and the sound of voices so various and so beautiful that he felt in a waking dream. But he remembered that there was bread, prizing the savor of a fair white loaf to one who was starving, and fruit sweet and wild berries, and richer than the what? Richer than the tended. I have three and a half pages left and I'm done. Alright, I'm done chapter 3. Fruits of the gardens, he drained a cup that was filled with a fragrant draught, cool as clear fountain, golden as summer afternoon. Sam could never describe in words, for picture clearly to himself what he felt or thought that night, though it remained in his memory as one of the chief events of his life. The nearest he ever got was to say, well, sir, if I can grow apples like that, I would love to call myself a gardener, obviously, because Sam's a gardener, obviously, he's Frodo's gardener. But it was a singing that went to my heart, if you know what I mean. Frodo sat eating, drinking, and talking with delight, but his mind was chiefly on the words spoken. He knew a little of elf speech and listened eagerly. Now and again he spoke of those that served him and thanked him in their own language. They smiled at him and said, laughing, here is a jewel among hobbits. After a while, Pippin fell fast asleep and was lifted up and borne away to a bower under the trees. There he was laid upon a soft bed and slept the rest of the night away. Sam refused to leave his master. When Pippin had gone, he came and sat curled up at Frodo's feet, where at last he nodded and closed his eyes. Frodo remained long awake, talking with Gildor. They spoke of many things, old and new, and Frodo questioned Gildor much about happenings in the wild world outside the Shire. Because I told you, the what? The hobbits are like cut off from the outside world. That's why Tolkien says outside the Shire, because hobbits are like the Shire. The Shire is their country, and everything outside the Shire is like they're cut off from it, obviously. Right? Like it says here, they spoke of many things, old and new, and Frodo questioned Gilder much about happening in the wild world outside the Shire. The times were mostly sad and ominous. Of gathering darkness, the wars of men, the flight of the elves. At last, Frodo asked a question that was near to his heart. Tell me, Gildor, have you ever seen Bilbo since he left us? Gildor smiled. Yes, he answered, twice. He said farewell to us on this very spot. I saw him once again, far from here. He would say no more about Bilbo, and Frodo fell silent. You do not ask me or tell me much that concerns yourself, Frodo, said Gildor, but I already know a little. So Gildor met Bilbo when he left the Shire 17 years ago. On Bilbo's journey, at some point through Bilbo's journey, Gildor met Bilbo, obviously. You do not ask me or tell me much that concerns yourself, Frodo, said Gildor, but I already know a little, and I can read more on your face and the thought behind your questions. You are leaving the Shire, and yet you doubt that you will find what you seek, or accomplish what you intend, or that you'll ever return. Is that not so? It is, said Frodo. But I thought my going was a secret known to Gandalf and my faithful Sam. Remember how I told you how Frodo did his best to keep leaving the Shire quietly, a secret. His task a secret, and that's why he came up with the excuse. He's going to Buckland, whatever it is, Buckland, whatever it is, right? But in reality, he's really going to what? He's tasked with destroying the ring. Obviously, he's going to Rivendell, obviously, to see the elves. It is, said Frodo, but I thought my going was a secret known only to Gandalf, my faithful Sam. He looked down at Sam, who was snoring gently. The secret will not reach the enemy from us, said Gildor. The enemy, said Frodo. Then you know why I am leaving the Shire. I do not know for what reason the enemy is pursuing you, answered Gildor. But I foresee that he is strange indeed, though this. So Gildor knows that the enemy, what? He knows that the enemy is on the move, and he has an idea of why Frodo is left the Shire, obviously. So Gildor knows some stuff, obviously. The secret will not reach the enemy from us, like he says here, right? So Gildor, the enemy, I said Frodo, then you know why I'm leaving the Shire. I do know for what reason the enemy is pursuing you, answered Gildor. But I foresee that he is strange indeed, though that seems to me. And I warn you that peril is now both before you and behind you, and upon either side. You mean the riders? I fear they were servants of the enemy. What are the Black Riders? Has Gandalf told you nothing about such creatures? Who's talking here? You mean the riders? I fear they were servants of the enemy. What are the Black Riders? Has Gandalf told you nothing about such creatures? And I think it is not time for me to say more, lest terror should keep you from my journey. For it seems to me that you have set out only just in time. If indeed you are in time, you must now make haste and neither stay nor turn back, for the Shire is no longer any protection to you. So what? So Gildor obviously knows that the enemy's on the move. He's telling Frodo, look, whatever you do, you have a dangerous journey ahead of you. The Black Riders are the enemies of Sauron, obviously. He's like, has Gandalf told you anything about the Black Riders? You don't even know anything about these creatures. He's saying that they're Sauron's forces, the enemy's on the move. Frodo, you can't go back to the Shire as Shire is a dangerous path for you. As the enemy's on the move. The enemy senses the power of the ring, obviously. I think it is not time for me to say more, lest terror should keep you from your journey. So Gildor is pretty much telling Frodo, look, the journey is danger. Your path is dangerous, obviously. And I think it is not for me to say more, lest terror should keep you from your journey. For it seems to me that you have set out only just in time. If indeed you are in time, you must now make haste, and neither stay nor turn back. For the Shire is no longer any protection to you. See what I'm saying here? I cannot imagine what information could be more terrifying than your hints and warnings, exclaimed Frodo. So Frodo is now scared because Gildor is revealing some of the terrifying words to Frodo, obviously. I knew that danger lay ahead, of course, but I did not expect to meet it in our own Shire. Can't a hobbit walk from water to the river in peace? But it is not your own Shire, said Gildor. Others dwelt here before hobbits were, and others will dwell here again where hobbits are no more. The wild world is all about you. You can fence it yourselves in, but you cannot forever fence it out. I know, and yet it has always seemed so safe and familiar. What can I do now? My plan was to leave the Shire secretly and make my way to Rivendell. But now my footsteps are dogged before I ever get to Buckland. Obviously. So Frodo's plan was obviously to what? To leave the Shire quietly, obviously. And he did leave the Shire quietly. He told him that he's going to Buckland, but in reality he's going to Rivendell, obviously. And Gildor is now telling Frodo that the path of his journey is dangerous. He's telling him the truth about the Black Riders. The Black Riders are the enemies of Sauron and all that stuff. To be aware of the enemy, yeah. And Frodo is now afraid. Frodo's like, I knew my journey was dangerous, but I didn't think it'd be this dangerous, obviously. 1.5 pages, I'm done here. I think you should still follow that plan, said Gildor. I do not think the road will prove too hard for your courage. But if you desire clear counsel, you should ask Gandalf. I do not know the reason for your flight, and therefore I do not know by what means your pursuers will. So even though Gildor knows Frodo's journey is dangerous, he doesn't know the real reason why Frodo's leaving the Shire, obviously. I do not know the reason for your flight, and therefore I do not know by what means your pursuers will assail you. These things Gandalf must know. I suppose that you will see him before you leave the Shire. I hope so, but this is another thing that makes me anxious. I have been expecting Gandalf for many days. He was to have come to Hobbiton at latest 2 nights ago, but he has never appeared. Now I am wondering what can have happened. Should I wait for him? Gildor was silent for a moment. I do not like this news, he said at last. That Gandalf should be late does not bode well. But it is said, do not meddle in the affairs of wizards, for they are subtle and quick to anger. The choice is yours, to go or wait. And it is also said, answered Frodo, go not to the elves for counsel, for they will say both no and yes. Is it indeed? Laughed Gildor. Elves seldom gives unguarded advice, for advice is a dangerous gift, even from the wise to the wise, and all courses may run ill. But what would you? You have not told me all concerning yourself, and how then shall I choose better than you? But if you demand advice, I will for friendship's sake give it. I think you should not go at once, without delay, and if Gandalf does not come before you set out, then I will also advise this. Do not go alone. Take such friends as are trusty and willing. Now you should be grateful, for you do not give this counsel gladly. The elves have their own labors and their own sorrows, and they are little concerned with the ways of hobbits or of any other creature upon the earth. Our paths cross there seldom, by chance or purpose. In this meeting there be more than chance, but the purpose is not clear to me, and I fear to say too much. I am deeply grateful, said Frodo, but I wish you would tell me plainly what the Black Riders are. If I take your advice, so even though Frodo knows the Black Riders are dangerous, he doesn't really know what the Black Riders are. Just like he asked Gildor before, and Gildor hasn't really told him what the Black Riders are. So Frodo wants to know who the Black Riders are, obviously. I may not see Gandalf for a long while, and I ought to know what is the danger that pursues me. It is not enough to know that they are servants of the enemy, answered Gildor. Gildor is not telling Frodo, look, Black Riders are servants of the enemy, answered Gildor. Flee them, speak no words to them, they are deadly, ask no more of me. But my heart, so he's saying whenever you see a Black Rider, run, obviously, right? And ask no more of me, but my heart forebodes that ere all is ended, you, Frodo, son of Drogo, will know more of these fell things than Gildor or Glorian. May Ibelith protect you. But where shall I find courage? Asked Frodo. That is what I chiefly need. Courage is found in unlikely places, said Gildor. Be of good hope. Sleep now. In the morning we shall have gone, but we will send our messages through the lands. The wandering companies shall know of your journey, and those that have power for good shall be on the watch. I name you Elfriend, and may the stars shine upon the end of your road. Seldom have we had such a light in strangers. It is fair to hear words of the ancient speech from the lips of the other wanderers in the world. Frodo fell to sleep coming upon him, even as Gildor finished speaking. I will sleep now, he said, and the elf led him to a bar beside Pippin, and he threw himself upon a bed and fell at once into a dreamless slumber. And that ends chapter what? That ends chapter 3. And now it's chapter 4, which is a shortcut to mushrooms. I believe this is where they meet Merry. It's either this chapter or the following chapter they meet Merry. I don't remember. So what did we find out so far for chapter 3? So the beginning of chapter 3, Frodo and Sam and Pippin are getting ready to leave the Shire. Frodo sells some of his possessions to Saddleback. This is useless information. He plans to leave the Shire secretly. He's waiting for Gandalf. Gandalf doesn't show up, obviously. He tells everyone that he's going to Buckley, when in reality he's going to Rivendell, because he wants to keep he wants to keep his adventure secret, obviously. Pretty much on their adventure, they camp, they walk, they talk, they sing songs. Frodo ends up hiding from the Black Rider. Sam and Pippin end up hiding from the Black Rider. Frodo's tempted to put on the ring, obviously. Sam thinks the Black Rider is one of the riders that his father spoke to in Hobbiton, whereas Pippin thinks there's no connection to the Black Rider in Hobbiton. In other words, the three hobbits are unsure of what the Black Riders are. Then they sing again, they sing a song, and Frodo hears a noise. He sees the Black Rider again. Gildor and the elves show up, and then the Black Rider leaves. Gildor tells him that him and the elves are exiled, obviously. Right? Gildor tells him that him and the elves are exiled. Obviously. Frodo asks Gildor who the Black Rider is, and then Gildor tells him not here, but let's discuss this somewhere else. So they invite Frodo, Sam, and Merry to their village, obviously. I forget the name of the village. Woodland Village or something like that. And then they're merry, you know what I'm saying? They eat dinner, they talk, all that stuff. And then Gildor tells Frodo that he's aware that the road is dangerous, that the Black Riders are dangerous. He doesn't know that Frodo has the ring, but he doesn't know Frodo's purpose of leaving the Shire. But he knows that Frodo cannot go back to the Shire because the enemy is drawn to the Shire because of the ring. And Gildor also told Frodo that his journey is dangerous, obviously. And then Frodo asks Gildor about the ring one more time, about the ring race. Hey, who are the Black Riders? He says the Black Riders are servants of the enemy. So even though Frodo, he knows the Black Riders are evil, but he's ignorant. He doesn't really know who they really are. And Gildor tells Frodo, hey, look, the Black Riders are the servants of the enemy, which is Sauron, obviously, and they're dangerous. He says if you see a Black Rider, run. obviously. And he pretty much told Frodo, like, hey, your journey, you have a dangerous road ahead of you, obviously, and you can't go back to the Shire as you're going to draw the forces of Sauron to the Shire. That you have to, you know, the Shire is no longer of protection to you. You have to leave the Shire, obviously. And Frodo, and even though Gildo doesn't know he doesn't know Frodo's purpose of leaving the Shire, he knows that the journey to Rivendell is dangerous because you have the forces of Sauron and all that stuff, right? And pretty much he wishes Frodo well. They talk all night, right? Frodo goes to sleep, and Gildo and them end up, I think, leaving in the morning. And Frodo, Sam, Frodo and Pippin and Sam continue their journey into the shortcut to the mushrooms. And I believe that's where you meet Farmer Maggot. A shortcut to mushrooms, I believe, is where you meet Farmer Maggot. And that sums up chapter 3 pretty much. Because all the other stuff where Tolkien describes the lands, the sunset, I'm not going to mention all that as just useless information. I told you the core information of chapter 3, which is them just walking and talking and meeting people along the way. I told you. Now we're on chapter 4, which is a shortcut to mushrooms. A shortcut to mushrooms. I have 5 minutes of my phone here. After this video, I'm going to take a shower, upload my video, and yeah. Right? Yeah. And hence why you Lord of the Rings fans are happy. Oh my god, Ivan's bringing the world to life. When he reads Lord of the Rings, it's so interesting. Because he's bringing the world to life. I guarantee you, even all you guys who aren't book nerds, all you guys who've seen the movies but haven't read the books, like, oh my god, Lord of the Rings is actually pretty interesting when Ivan reads it out loud. Yeah. It's a lot more interesting. It's a lot more interesting when I read it out loud. I bring the characters in the world more to life. Whereas when you read in your head, it can be pretty boring, man. Whereas when I read out loud, it's a lot more interesting. Hence why I'm enjoying my Lord of the Rings series a lot, obviously. How far I've come from the prologue. I remember when I started the prologue, like 3 weeks ago, 2.5, 3 weeks ago, I started the prologue, and now I'm already on chapter 4. I'm like 100 plus pages into the book. There's a good chance I should get to all of book 1 by the end of the month. By the end of October, I should get through all of book 1. You're gonna meet all these characters in the first half of Fellowship of the Ring, obviously. I'm gonna show my camera up here.